Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Trader Merlin Show. It is your weekend edition. Cheers, everyone. Today, this is from Joe Nicholas up in Canada. We're drinking Distillarium Rye today. Delicious stuff. Hope you had a great week. We have a little tribute shout out here in just a second. Let me take a sip of this one as I toast all of you. Been a heck of a trading week. Of course, for the shorts, was not so good. I still have my Q position open short, but most likely get stopped out beginning of next week. I'll explain that one here in just a second. But before we progress, there's a lot of, I'm a movie buff. Got a bunch of movies I like, and obviously I was a big fan of Rocky growing up as a kid. One of my favorites is Happy Gilmore, and one of the actors in that, professional football player as well, albeit very small career, was Carl Weathers. You guys may have seen that Carl Weathers passed away, and you might know him as Clubber Lang from Rocky, or my favorite role that he did on the right-hand side. That was, I think it's Chubbs Peterson was his name from Happy Gilmore. Just a great scene. Anyway, he passed away. So cheers to Carl Weathers. Thanks for the memories and the fun and the entertainment that you provided. Hope you're in a better place today, my friend. All right, that's that second shot of rye whiskey. That's a good one there. Let's start things off by just going through the end of the week numbers. Obviously, this main story today was the follow-through, not just from Meta and Amazon, but the recovery from Apple. So I'm going to start with the recovery from Apple just to draw that picture for you. Remember, at one point we were down almost 2%. You actually bring up the numbers here. We were down, get the exact number for you, 2.57% on Apple. And that had this nice big drawdown. I was actually excited on this one because at one point we actually had exceeded these lows that go back to January 5th as well as January 17th. Kind of a little double bottom there when it bounced. When we were down below that today, I was like, uh-oh, here we go. Here we go. Let's see what happens. And lo and behold, Apple just ripped all day long. And even on that somewhat disappointing earnings. Remember, we ran through those earnings numbers yesterday. In looking at them, most of them seemed good. The biggest part for me that I thought was troublesome was what's going on with China. $3 billion shortfall there on revenue from China. Not a good sign of trends going forward. You expect that to increase. But everything else looking fairly decent for Apple, and I guess the market wanted to shrug that off, and we saw some nice gains. NASDAQ itself up about 1.5% as we speak here going into the close. The other monster, let's look at Amazon, which wasn't the best performer, but 7% on the day. Man, just, wow, what a day. Let's zoom out a little bit and see what we look like with respect to all-time highs. Now, I'm going to do this on a weekly to make it a little bit clearer picture here for everybody. We're not there yet, right? All-time highs, I'll put a horizontal line across the top here just so we have that as a reference point. Looks to be, right? Yeah, I think all-time high was 188.65. That goes back to right around July 6th of 2021. Now, of course, this rally we've had since the end of 2022 on Amazon has been pretty fantastic. It was down around $83. Now we're at 171. So talking 100% rate of return in a little over a year. Great for anybody who's long Amazon. And this week has been nothing but absolutely spectacular. Now, will we get to those all-time highs? Probably. I think over time we'll get to those all-time highs, but still just a great trend at this point. I'm not going to chase it. I definitely would like to own some Amazon. It's one of the few that I've been bullish on since inception. And I remember going back into the late 90s, someone interviewed me once and asked me, what's your favorite company out there? What would you buy into? And I was actually, I think it was in 2001, maybe it was in Italy. I said, Amazon. How can you go wrong with what Amazon's going to do? I said they'll dominate the world someday. And I bought some Amazon at like $40, sold it at 80, made 100% rate of return. I thought, yeah, killing it on that trade. If only I held it, because that was, and I sold it at 80. That was split adjusted, and there's been many splits since then. So congratulations to Apple. But that wasn't your big story. The big story was Meta. All right, now I am not a fan of Meta. I don't like Facebook. I think that they run one of the most incompetent customer service entities on the face of the planet. I get every day somebody will post on my face. So I have multiple Facebook accounts, as you guys may know. I've got some personal ones, and I have the TraderMerlin one that I use. If I post anything on my TraderMerlin Facebook page, instantly, somebody with the exact same profile and everything as me, TraderMerlin, everything is exactly the same, is spamming nonstop for you to buy crypto that you're going to get. I'll give you crypto for free if you sign up. And I've reported them over 100 times, and Facebook has done absolutely nothing. So not a fan. I'm actually really debating just cutting my Facebook account Facebook account altogether. But I guess you got to have one in this day and age. So all in all, technically, this is a very different picture than what we saw with Amazon, right? Amazon had their struggles, but you look at Facebook, you're looking at all-time highs. And more importantly is the rally that started right around October of 2022. So same time that we saw that surge in Amazon, but instead of being up just 100%, Facebook from peak to trough is up 451%. So anybody who's holding FB, loving it. This was actually one of Larry's picks. You guys might remember Larry was on the show. I'd like to look it up and see when he was on, but he was looking at the fundamentals, and I do believe it was down during this sell-off here, and saying, I believe that it's undervalued according to the Warren Buffett methodology, which Larry loves to use. So there we go. Great day. You should call Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, right. Because I have so many connections, Margaret. If I had a ton of connections or was a social network or anything like that, this show would probably be very different and maybe have a lot more followers. But I am horrible at networking. It's my biggest, I think, character flaw is my networking. I do not, I'm terrible at networking. Anyway, that is your main drivers for this week. But you notice that you have some sympathy rallies as well. If we look at Microsoft, look, ever since they reported earnings, there's your Tuesday announcement for earnings, which was, they were down on that day, didn't look that great on the next morning, and all of a sudden, this is the weekly. Let's get the daily on there. That's why you have a daily. There you go. So on their earnings announcement on Tuesday night, it was a pretty big drop down. But all of a sudden, off those Thursday earnings from Apple, Amazon, and Meta, you had a sympathy rally. Microsoft is up 1.84% today, and then you can look at Google as well. While not as much of a sympathy rally, certainly recouped a bit of their early morning losses going forward. Now, it feels just based off these 5 companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple, and Meta, that Google is the weakest one right now, just based off the technical charts we've seen over the last 4 days. Not to say that Google is bad by any stretch of the imagination, but you notice that it is still significantly down from where their earnings call was. Now, Microsoft, not in the same boat. It's actually higher than where it was the night before they came out with earnings. Of course, we've already looked at Amazon, which is at all-time highs. We've looked at Meta, which is at all-time highs. And you've got Apple, which has recouped their losses. And I guess we'll see how this looks over the next couple of days. Now, from a technical and earnings piece, the one that gets me the most here is I would probably say Apple is in the worst shape. And I know that you guys are going to look at their revenue numbers and say, hey, the revenue was great, it was up. Most of their numbers were up. I was surprised to see iPhone sales as high as they were, given all the supply chain disruption and issues with, and just lack of innovating and creating a new product. That 15 is the same thing. Same basic product that they sold in the 14. So why would people buy that thing? Anyway, those numbers were great, but the China stuff, that worries me. If we see sales drop again in the next quarter, that's going to bring Apple down. And I think that part of the reason you're seeing it show weakness already over the past couple of months, really going back into December of last year, is due to that, is due to the knowledge that China is starting to slow down. All right, let's see. Liz says, Apple couldn't have worked out better. I collected money on the puts and I bought yesterday as an earnings hedge, then recovered all the drawdown on the underlying. Excellent. Great, Liz. Love it when a plan comes together, right? Hallelujah to options. Call my senators. What are you going to call them? Yeah, exactly. I like that. What are you going to call them? I didn't use Facebook, but I've owned Meta since 179. I'm okay with that. Yeah, you don't have to like something to earn a profit on it. This is something I find interesting, specifically with individuals who have some sort of moral issue. Like, for example, there's some people who are, I'm not going to buy a Philip Morris or Altria, or I'm not going to buy Smith & Wesson because I hate guns. You got to take a step back from that and just say, are people going to buy these products? If they are, is it going to drive the share price up? If it is, then buy the damn thing. Put your ethics aside. This is about making money in the financial markets. And for many of you, I know it's about investing in companies that you feel strongly about. But bottom line is, you're looking to make money. Your contributions by buying shares doesn't help the company, right? So if you buy, a share of Smith & Wesson thinking you're helping the gun industry, you're really not helping them out anyway. It doesn't help them out. All right, what else we got? Let's see. Who's the next Amazon? Well, Mark, if I knew that, be a different world. I don't know. I don't see anything personally at this point that has... It's a very interesting discussion. For those of you here today, I know it's a weekend show and a lot of you take Fridays off. You type in a chat what you think might be the next Amazon. And remember, when you say the next Amazon, that means a company that disrupts and changes the way that we do things, that creates some innovative technology or does something so different that it completely changes the way in which we do things going forward. I think you'd all agree Amazon has completely changed the way that we shop. I used to go to the malls. I used to love going to the malls as a kid. Now I dread it. I dread going in stores with just idiot shoppers and pushing and shoving and just rudeness. I don't need it. I'll do Amazon all day long. So you type in a chat what you think might be that next Amazon. As you guys know, I have a fondness for Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin, even though it's not creating a product or service really, but it's changing the way that we transact and hold money. I think, for me anyway, that's why I'm invested in Bitcoin and digital assets, is I think that might be that disruptive technology that changes the way that the world works and functions. You guys jumped on it as well. Big Eb says, Bitcoin's next Amazon. Yeah, it's tough to say because, look, we all understand. You talk to anybody on the street, they know what Amazon does, and it makes sense. Oh, yeah, I can buy anything at Amazon, right? Delivered to my door with under 24 hours. I'll give you a good example. For my studio here, my camera, it only runs on batteries. So I had to buy these battery packs. They only last an hour and a half each, but in 3 hours of recording, the batteries were dead. Well, I've got to shoot next Wednesday. I'm going to be recording for 8 hours, and I need to record some the next day. Instead of me trying to find these battery packs and going to, what store am I going to go to? Best Buy? Do they have that specific battery pack? It's a custom one. Is that the one that I'm going to use? I went to Amazon. I found one that is a battery charger with 3 of these battery packs. It was delivered to my house by 4 a.m. the next day. So that was under 12 hours that it took to get to my house delivered. And it was cheaper than I could find at a retail store anyway. So that to me is that innovation of Amazon. Now, for... Naum says Walmart has a good online service now. They're definitely getting better, and I think that's part of the reason that Walmart. I'm bullish on Walmart. And in that article, I didn't address the article I wrote for Bar Chart. I didn't address the online presence of it, just just the business of it. So, Bitcoin is money, and it's a way for you and I to become our own banks. And if you look at how much money is in the banking system, then I definitely think there's potential there. What has to happen is adoption and acceptance. We have to have merchants that accept it and ways for us to transact using these digital assets. And when that comes, I would chalk that up to a major innovation. Now, Margaret says Solana. Solana is in that same vein of digital assets. Now, remember, Bitcoin, guys, is one-dimensional. It's just designed to be a payment network. That's it, exchange of value. When you look at Solana, it's more akin to what Ethereum is doing, which is store transactions, make sure that blockchain is secure, and allow people to program on top of that. Is Solana the Ethereum killer? Certainly from a transactions per second perspective, it destroys Ethereum. But Ethereum has the network effect. Most people know Ethereum, they're using Ethereum, they hold Ethereum. And if Ethereum can get the scalability that Solana has, then Ethereum will win that battle. But that's going to have to happen here real soon. What else do you say here? John says, with AI, I don't know if AI... I certainly believe that AI is going to change the way that we do things. But in what capacity? Is it the people who are writing the programs for AI, like a ChatGPT and creating that database of information? Or is it the utilization of artificial intelligence to create different products and services? So, there's a couple different ways we can go with AI, and I don't see any real clear leader out there. Certainly, you could look at companies like Palantir or NVIDIA or... C3, there are a lot of different companies in that space, but I don't see any one of them being the leader that you're going to just bow down to and say, that's Skynet, right? That's the juggernaut that's going to dominate the world. If you are a big believer in AI, you have a couple different choices here. Number one, you could go find an ETF that I don't know off the top of my head. Find an ETF that is a mixed portfolio of AI-related companies. That's probably the easiest thing to do. Just buy a portfolio of them. The second choice would be to start building your own portfolio, and that becomes a little more daunting. You're going to know most of the big names, right? And I've already done articles on this in the past. I think one of my first articles for Bar Chart that you guys can go find, let me see here, real quick. I don't know if they even have that old article still, but one of my first articles I wrote for barchart.com was all about AI. And I think that, that was a good entry level article as far as, yeah, here it is. I'll put it in the chat. This is from March 4th of 2023. But in there, I break down a lot of the different AI companies, and this is just some of them, right? I'm sure that there's many more than this, but it might be a good starting place for some of you who are looking at, alternative names which you may not recognize, like UiPath. I had in there Palantir, Intuitive Surgical, of course, NVIDIA, and the other major players. Would NVIDIA be that juggernaut? Great question. So NVIDIA at this point, it is that juggernaut, right? And that's why you're seeing NVIDIA's chart just scream to the upside. Right now, Big Eb is here. He is probably, doing cartwheels down the street, loving what's going on with NVIDIA. Sorry, my chart disappeared. Let me bring it up here. Yeah, you have all-time highs yet again. I mean, NVIDIA may be closing in on the most consecutive all-time high streak ever. Pretty amazing chart here. As soon as I can bring it up for you. I know I'm stalling while I try to bring it up. Here's NVIDIA. All right, Big Ed, pretty happy out there today. So today, huge, almost 5% gain for NVIDIA today. It's up again in after-hour session. Yeah, we had a couple little hiccups here, but beautiful day today. Of course, tech leading that surge. And I do believe that it is that juggernaut. It's the only one that has the chip making functionality that it runs AI, this generative AI stuff. If you want it, you got to have their A100 processor. And now I think they're coming out with one that's even bigger and better and faster. But, I don't see Intel in that space. I don't see AMD or other companies at the level that NVIDIA is. NVIDIA has that competitive advantage right now. The problem is, are you going to jump on it right now? Right? You're going to buy and chase this thing? I mean, it has been on an absolute tear. This is phenomenal what NVIDIA has done, particularly in the last 12 months. If you go to this low here from that October 31st, from Halloween to the peak we established today, NVIDIA is up 69%. I mean, that is a monumental move. And, does this vault it to become one of the biggest companies in the world? I don't know about that. I've already voiced my opinion, and you guys, I think some of you echo that sentiment, which is I think there's an extreme vulnerability to NVIDIA, and that is Taiwan Semiconductor. Massive vulnerability. If anything goes bad there, then all of a sudden you could see NVIDIA crater overnight. But let's hope nothing happens bad over there. It's not just because of Taiwan Semiconductor, but human life that could be lost because of that. Yeah, is it 1.67 trillion market cap? I mean, you're putting it right up there now as one of the biggest companies in the world, and it wasn't that way, a year and a half ago. Let's go to FinViz for you, and there's a really nice filter on FinViz where you can just go here to Screener. We'll just go sort by market cap, which is right there, and it is now the 6th largest company in the world, or in the United States, excuse me. 1.63 is what I've got for market cap. Maybe it's slightly higher than that. But, if you honestly go back a year and a half, let's say 2 years, guys. If you go back 2 years, be honest with yourselves, would you have thought, oh, NVIDIA is just this juggernaut? What a monstrous company. Probably not 2 years ago. It really became prominent in that space, in my belief, since, let's just say, November, December of last year when ChatGPT was blowing up. So you look at it now, you've got Microsoft at $3 trillion, Apple's at $2.87 trillion, Google 1.9, call it $1.8 trillion, Amazon right behind it. So, it is just about to pass Amazon and Google. That's an unbelievable ascent in market capitalization over the past year and a half. Really phenomenal. Other than that, you look at it's bigger than Meta. It's bigger than Eli Lilly, and ironically, it's bigger than Taiwan Semiconductor, which is where they get all their chips from. It's bigger than Tesla, Broadcom, Visa, JP Morgan. I mean, that says it's bigger than Walmart. I mean, goodness gracious, phenomenal. So yes, it is that juggernaut. The question is, how much does that continue? How much of that is factored in and priced in? A lot of times with these growth stocks, which is what NVIDIA is, you get these multiple premium valuations that are much higher than normal because people are expecting great things in the future. For example, let's just go look at those top 10 we talked about. Microsoft, Look at the PE ratio, 37. Okay, fine. What's the benchmark? Historically, guys, when you look at PE ratios, the S&P has an average over the last 60 years or so of right around 15 to 18. I'll give it 18 to be generous. Well, that means Microsoft's about double the average PE ratio. You can see here Apple's at 28. By that metric, Apple's cheap, right? You've got Google's at 24. Then you have Amazon at 59. And the highest on this list, at least in the top 10, is NVIDIA, 87. That tells you that people are now paying a premium to buy NVIDIA with the expectations that over time they're going to see more growth and that PE ratio will ultimately slip and get lower once earnings get better and better and better. Yeah, typically, Big Eb says, are those trailing PEs? Yes. I'm assuming typically PE ratios on most platforms is TTM, which is trailing 12 months, not forward-looking, right? When you look at forward-looking, that's a hypothesis. Well, I think you're going to make this much money. So TTM is, at least in my opinion, a better way to go at it because you're seeing actual numbers, actual data. So the whiskey was getting warm over here. I didn't want it to get lonely. Maybe buy. Oh, that's what Steve says. Maybe buy some Taiwan Semiconductor just in case. Well, think about what that would do. Okay, and I know I've mentioned this, and I hate repeating myself on the show, but we're going to get a little repeat every now and again. If Taiwan Semiconductor, which is right around $600 billion market cap, is providing most of the base layer chips, right, the foundational elements of what NVIDIA creates. NVIDIA takes those chips, uses them, and reconstructs and makes a new device based off those chips with their own proprietary information and creates the A100, right, which is their flagship product. I mentioned this before. You had this AI chip that NVIDIA makes is the best of the best at this point. Now, there is no mystery. We have had a history where China has taken a product or service, or usually a product, reverse engineered it, made it cheaper, and then flooded the markets with their cheap products and killed the US version. So Biden has said those A100 chips are not allowed to go to China and I believe the Middle East, if I'm not mistaken. And if by doing that, you're now saying we are going to censor what American businesses are going to send to China. Now, I mentioned this before, like I would get a little bit irritated here if I'm China, like, hey, we want these A100s. It's the best of the best. Why not give it to us? And of course, I'm going to buy a bunch and I'm going to reverse engineer those and have my companies make them much cheaper, which for all of us would probably be good, right? The cost would be cheaper. For NVIDIA, it would be, a dramatic hit to their business. With that, and I got to look the numbers up. If one of you has a chance, look it up. I believe it's like 90 or 95% of the chips that NVIDIA uses comes from Taiwan Semiconductor. And I make the point that having such an overdependence on one vendor is a extreme risk. Now, while some of you are enjoying monster gains with NVIDIA, if I were you, I would buy deep out of the money puts on NVIDIA just in case for that black swan event. You're hearing more tensions now with the U.S. and China and Taiwan. I was talking to Larry today at lunch, and he was saying, did you see the news that China was threatening our infrastructure if we go to war with Taiwan? I was like, I did not see that, but that's a very real possibility, and I hope it never gets to that point. But as just a protection mechanism, I'd probably go way out of the money, buy some leaps on it that are, I'm going to get for really, really cheap, and just call it a very cheap insurance policy should something hit the fan, which hopefully it doesn't. But if Taiwan Semiconductor gets slapped and China says you can't send chips to the U.S., NVIDIA's in deep doo-doo. Now, hopefully, the current administration and those that are running for office going forward see the necessity and importance of semiconductor and chip manufacturing. We should be putting more factories inside the United States borders so that we don't have to have the reliance on international. But that's just my 2 cents. I'm not running for office. So does this mean AMD is underpriced if NVIDIA is worth this much? No, not necessarily, Colton. They're making different products. See, right now, nobody is making what NVIDIA is making. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to make up some numbers here, just bear with me. It's kind of like saying if Ford was a $5 stock and you had Ferrari at $100 stock, does that mean that Ford is undervalued? Doesn't really mean anything at that point. What it means is the market has determined that Ford has a value of $5 and Ferrari has a value of $100. If you look at as far as components and technology, Ford is not making a product that competes with Ferrari. They're going after different markets. AMD is going after more retail markets, whereas NVIDIA is going after higher-end graphics and visual users. So they're targeting different markets. But what's happening is AMD and Intel are both realizing, well, shoot, this is where the industry is headed. And while we're building retail products, we better create some special division within our companies that say, let's create generative AI chips. We have to, right? If we want to stay fresh and relevant in the world of semiconductors, we got to compete. So I don't know if I would say AMD is undervalued. Certainly that's much more of a fundamental analyst question. And I'm not a fundamental analyst. We could talk to Larry about those types of things because he loves that. But, that's... I think you're probably right to some extent, Colton, where you look at it and say, all chip makers are going to have to go after this market. So, if we look at AMD, AMD has had also a stellar run. Remember, from those lows, which was on October 31st, which I'll go to the exact same date, to the peak we had, AMD is up 96%. Well, NVIDIA, which I had that same picture up just a minute ago, but I took it off, is having a similar run, 69%, call it 70%. 90+% of NVIDIA chips come from Taiwan. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I thought it was 95, but honestly, still 90% of any product. I mean, look, if Ford got 90% of their car parts from Mexico, you'd say, okay, that's dangerous. However, we don't have conflict with Mexico. You don't see it constantly rising where there's tensions flaring with Mexico and we're throwing jabs at each other. Yeah, a little banter here and forth and some border issues, but that's okay. With China, it's a bit different, especially given the military might of China. So yeah, 90%, that's just crazy. How long can NVIDIA survive with only one supplier of chips before they are maxed out? Great question, RG. I don't know that. I'm not an expert in chips. What I do know is NVIDIA is making an effort to find alternative sources. I watched the press conference with the CEO, and he acknowledged it. He's like, look, we get a bulk of our chips from Taiwan Semiconductor, but we're looking to build different vendors, right? And the problem is that not just finding the vendor to make those chips, but the chips have to be the same caliber as the ones you were getting before. And, as you may have learned in your life, when you buy technology from one vendor versus another, they're not always equal. Just try buying a television. Like, oh, I want that Hisense TV from Target because it's $300, or I go buy myself a nice Panasonic for $500. Probably going to get better quality with the Panasonic, but that's just saying. Maybe a better play is to spread some money over a few other chip companies. Correct. You could go out there and buy something like SMH, right? Here's SMH. This is a semiconductor ETF. There are several of them out there, but this is one of the more popular ones. And as I've shown you guys before, if you go to bar chart and type in SMH, you can look through these different semiconductor ETFs and find one that may have more of a weighting towards NVIDIA. So here, for example, SMH, its number one component is NVIDIA, 22.79%. So if you wanted to get a hold of some NVIDIA but also hedge it, notice the second component, Taiwan Semiconductor, then AMD, Broadcom, ASML. You're getting a full mix here. Now, if you wanted heavy exposure to OLED, universal display, you're not getting it here. Very small. Let's see. Colton says, Taiwan Semiconductor is one of the only chip manufacturers that can mass produce 4 millimeter. Yep, exactly. Or 4 nanometer. Yes, exactly. And that's why they're getting all the chips in there. That's, and making that point that they are building factories here. I think I read that they're doing in Arizona, I believe, and a couple other factories in the U.S. It's about, you have to have that same quality or better of chip, right? If we could somehow manufacture, it's 4 nanometers, maybe we get down to 2 nanometer chips, then we actually maybe even compete with Taiwan Semiconductor and beat them. I think that as a politician, I would probably be looking at this as a platform issue. And I would make it very clear that we can't compete internationally with what Taiwan Semiconductor is doing. Well, we should make it an American product. We should bring it home. We should have factories. We'll do government subsidies to help these companies build their infrastructure so that we are the leader in chip manufacturing. Because in my mind, whoever controls the chips controls technology. I don't know. Maybe you guys disagree with that. And it's fine. We don't have to have any agreement. But I think if you are the one that has the best computer chips in the world, you can advance your technology faster than anybody else. And if we all of a sudden get cut off from those chips, I think we go back not to the Stone Ages by any means, but we're now left with primitive tools, primitive technology. Let's see, what else we got? Taiwan Semi is building the world's biggest chip plant in Phoenix. It was Phoenix, right? Yep. But Steve, that's not going to happen in a year. right? To build a factory that big, just the infrastructure of the building is going to take a year and a half. And then all of a sudden to bring in all the equipment and get it going, you're talking a 3-year process. So there's going to be this interesting window of time going forward until that's online. Trust me, I would be ecstatic to see it. I obviously, you guys know I wasn't born in the U.S., but I am an absolute patriot, and I think that we should bring those jobs bring the resources that we bring from other countries. Like right now, we're dependent on Taiwan Semiconductor as one of the major suppliers. If we're that dependent on it, bring it home, right? If we were that dependent on, trying to come up with an example here, coffee. If coffee was such an integral part to the advancement of America, then let's put in coffee plantations, even though we may not have the environment in all of the U.S. I know we have Hawaii has some good environment for it, but let's bring these things home as opposed to getting them from overseas. Let's be the best of these things. Yeah, I've been building it for 3 years. Yeah. Not sure on equipment. I just researched Taiwan Semiconductor. Yeah. Well, it's all about learning. And it's just, you look at what, in my mind, I look at what's going to be the next conflict. And I've mentioned this before. I think that AI is going to lead us to a lot of conflict going forward. I think AI is you're going to see deep fakes that are so good that you're not going to know what's real anymore or not. And that's a frightening prospect, because then, for those people who consume a lot of media, and I know a lot of you here consume media, you're on different sources and sites and looking for your news, your politics, and that type of stuff. You're going to be watching some video that you think is, the leader that you're supporting, and he's going to be saying something radical, which he never said or she never said, but some AI-generated piece, deepfake, made it look that way. That frightens me for the next few years. They're almost on the phase 1 of the chip plant. Great. It's great to hear. It's great to hear, but honestly, we need one in Phoenix. We need one in, upstate New York. We need, 3 or 4 of these factories around the U.S. to really get them going. And honestly, it'll bring in a lot of jobs as well. The challenge with America, and I think you guys all understand and know this well, is my standard of living. If you were going to say, hey, Merlin, we got you a job in Phoenix working at the new Taiwan Semiconductor plant, and here's your job, what am I going to make? If I'm in the U.S., you're going to give me 6 figures? Am I making $100,000? If it's not $100,000, I'm not going, right? If I go to Taiwan, I'm pretty sure, I don't know factually, but I'm pretty sure that the salary for those employees is significantly lower than what we are paid here. And that's one of the challenges we will face with this, is how do we entice people to work for these chip making firms and keep those costs of the product so low. A lot of the stuff that products and services we've gotten from China are specifically because their infrastructure costs, their cost of production and labor costs are so base level that we can't compete with that, right? I'm pretty sure most of you aren't going to want to go out there and work for $3 an hour at a chip plant. No, I need $40, $50 an hour. Well, they're going to tell you to pound sand. In the U.S., we're going to have a different issue there, right? Those chips are going to be more expensive, but at least they'll be manufactured at home, which makes our domestic goods and services that use our local chips are going to be more expensive. It's crazy in Phoenix. I would imagine that it's going to bring in a tremendous amount of jobs, and bravo, right? We need that. More jobs. Correction, Taiwan Semiconductor plant is in Arizona, should be completed by 28. Whew. I mean, yeah. If that's the case, Big Ed, then NVIDIA is like walking on eggshells, or at least a little bit, always have that nervousness in the back of their head for the next 5 years. And by then, technology may change. But yeah, interesting topic. All right, let me go with, that was a great tangent side shoot there, guys. Thanks, that was fun. I enjoyed those types of discussions. Taiwan opened a school in Phoenix to train new employees. That's great. Good. And ultimately, if I had time, I would go and research what the average costs or what the employees earn at Taiwan Semiconductor in Taiwan in dollar equivalents. My guess is it's less than half of what we would get, probably a third. So 2028 to have when you say all 3 phases, that's to have everything good, up and running factory. Hey, Chris, happy Groundhog Day. By the way, I didn't even, thanks for saying that, Chris. I totally forgot. My graphic today, you see Puxatani Phil here in his nice little winter coat and top hat. Apparently, he did not see his shadow today, which means spring is going to come early. You wouldn't know it by the 5-day forecast of rain here in Southern California, which is like, we don't get 5 days of rain in Southern California over a year, and we're getting 5 days in a row starting on, I think, Monday all the way through Friday. So cheers to the rain, cheers to Puxatawny, and also a great movie, by the way, Groundhog Day, hilarious one. Yeah, I know, Steve, it'd be a little bit tricky to find that one out. I'm sure it's not that public, but it's got to be out there somewhere. I'm willing to bet you it's probably a third of what an American worker would be getting paid. We have a much higher standard and cost of living here in the United States. Now, Taiwan probably going to have much higher wages than China, right? Because China will just put a factory in Guangzhou, some remote part, and have access to thousands and thousands and thousands of workers. And they'll just go, yeah, we're going to pay this much. You want a job, take it or leave it. And people are coming in because there's not a lot of work other than farming in some of these rural places. So there you go. Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Steve. That was great. Thanks all of you guys for bringing up stats for me. 65. Yeah, that's right. You guys had the bad weather for your football game. Going to be a good one, man. We'll have to see if we can do some kind of pool for the 49ers Chiefs game next weekend. That's I'm excited about that one. All right, so really the talk track all this week has been earnings. Right, those 5 major companies. Next week, we do have more earnings come out. I'm just going to go into that right now just in case I decide to wrap up the show early here today. So here is next week's earnings and economic calendar. I'll just knock that stuff out. Here's your earnings calendar. You have like 697 companies reporting next week, but for Monday, let me just jump into Monday's session here. There's a few big names. You have Caterpillar, you have McDonald's, you have Vertex Pharmaceuticals, On Semiconductor, NXP Semiconductor, so you have those little tech firms there. You have Simon Property Group, which is the great big kind of mall realty company. Tyson Foods, Estee Lauder. So you've got a couple pretty big company names in there reporting earnings next week. One question has come up repeatedly. It's been about McDonald's. I see that one's pop up quite a bit. From a technical perspective, though, McDonald's is just traversing sideways. I'm a fan. I think, people always have that need every now and again to go buy some cheap, quick food. Well, that's McDonald's. I love it. In this case, though, I wouldn't be buyer or seller of McDonald's at this point. It feels like it's just going to start to continue to drift sideways here in this kind of sideways channel between 288 and about 304 or 303. So nothing that exciting on McDonald's. Caterpillar. Notice Caterpillar's nice run. This could be a case of buy the rumor, sell the news. It's been driven up significantly from those lows. And that same window of time that these chip makers like NVIDIA were up 69%, Caterpillar, nothing to do with tech and chips. 41.8% increase. That's a good sign. When you see Caterpillar expanding like this, that means that there's a demand for their products. It means their sales numbers are going to be most likely better than expected, which means expansion. That means infrastructure, roads, bridges. Caterpillar's making backhoes and bulldozers and stuff like that. That's pretty damn good to see their chart look like that. But they're coming out with their earnings on Monday, as well as a couple different semiconductor companies like On Semiconductor. There you go. Doesn't look like they're very on, does it? We looked at AMD. Did we look at Intel? We did not look at Intel, right? Intel, while it doesn't look fantastic, it still has that nice big uptrend since 2022. Looks great. You look at AMD, which we talked about. Great move to the upside. We already looked at NVIDIA. Let's look at On Semiconductor again. That does not look the same, right? So when you're looking at that spectrum of investments in like SMH and saying which ones would I like to be buying into, some of these are going to be leaders, some of them are going to be laggards. And at this point, what's driving the SMH semiconductors up is the 22% holding in NVIDIA. SMH chart is just great. PayPal, Disney, Palantir also have earnings this week. Yep, they do. Infinite. I was just doing what's on Monday because I'll be doing a show on Monday. But yes, I believe Disney is on Tuesday. But you have a lot of companies reporting this week. Quite a few. There's no names that are going to be as magnificent as those Magnificent Seven, right? No Google, no Amazon, Apple, Meta. They're already done. But you do have some big, I'll call second tier names. Okay, exactly. Oliver says homes, roads. Yep, Caterpillar. That's a good sign, right? That means good economic expansion. All right, how much time we got? Oh, all right. Good. Pick the top two and hold on for dear life. Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I've mentioned this many times before, and it's okay. We all have different ways we do things. At this point, I don't think I would be buying the top two and holding on for dear life. I would go out and get something like SMH just because I want to diversify. Now, what you could do is, if you liked SMH, right, which is the semiconductor ETF, which has been absolutely phenomenal, right? Let's go back from those lows that we saw, same October, right around October 31st, to the highs. SMH is actually up more than NVIDIA. So let me go here and go right to October 31st. Using the same analysis from October 31st lows to the peaks, the semiconductor ETF, which has NVIDIA and AMD in it, is up more than AMD and NVIDIA. What does that tell you? That tells you that a lot of these companies are doing better than NVIDIA from a percentage gain. I know that seems inconceivable, as they would say in Princess Bride. Inconceivable! But this ETF is up 108%, and NVIDIA, from that same period of time... Oh, I'm sorry. No. That's a huge mistake on my part. SMH, I was faulty. I went back 1 year. Okay, never mind. I strike that from the record, Your Honor. At least I caught myself where one of you did. That ETF in that same window of time is only up 43. So, okay, there you go. I fixed it. Yes, Tom, I will cover each and every one of those topics. I'll do an in-depth description of that for you and make sure we get each of those covered in detail with a full fundamental analysis breakdown, and I will print out PDFs for you on each one of those topics, Tom. Cheers to you, my friend. Well, we've already done a few of them. We already did Apple. We already did... let's look at Boeing. Why not? All right. I do want to look at Boeing. So I'm just going to bring up Boeing here because that's a question I've had on this one in the past is this a buying opportunity for Boeing? You know, someone asked me the other day, it said, would you want to get on a Boeing aircraft today? And I was like, with all the media and everything you're hearing, instinctively you go, hell no, I don't want to get on that one. But reality is, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Airplanes are safer than driving in a car. I'd feel much better riding in an airplane, other than my anxiety being stuck in an airplane. I feel that the safety in those is much better than driving in a vehicle. However, there are some issues happening with Boeing, and I've never owned Boeing personally, never bought it. I don't know why. Not really been in one that I've gravitated towards. But, you look at their price now. It was at $265 just a couple weeks ago, and now you're looking at $209. So if you were a value player here, you're getting it for, $56 cheaper? I think $56 off the top. That's pretty good. That's 20% discount from its previous price just a couple weeks ago. So in that sense, not a bad play if you believe that Boeing is going to continue to go up over time. But other than that, I would probably stay away. Let's see since the Lions won't be playing anymore, Tom has plenty of time. Yes, there you go. All right, so no Boeing for me. As far as our markets go today, I was a little, I did have to raise my eyebrow suspiciously here because look what happened to the 10-year. You had one of the single biggest one-day gains in the 10-year yield that we've seen in quite some time. It was 16 basis points. Right now it dropped a little bit, but it's 14 basis points in one day. That's a lot. That's definitely a lot to have it jump up in one day. We did respect this low that was put in. Maybe I'll just move this line down to that low, which is right there. To me, that line is still respected at 3.789. We'll see. Maybe we get a chance to break this downward trend line, which goes back to these peaks from October of last year. But big move up today. In my opinion, that should have had a down push on the market. But tech was so strong, it just pushed higher and higher and higher. So 3.66% gain today for the 10-year, making it number one. You all saw the NASDAQ break to all-time closing high, not intraday high. We actually had that back here on the 24th was the all-time intraday high, but we did have an all-time closing high today on the NASDAQ, up 1.7%. Dollar index also. Look at that move in the dollar index, where we talked about it reversing this trend and breaking out. Well, it did break out today, and I still stand by the 104.50 mark as your next big stopping point for the dollar. If that keeps throttling forward, then I would expect some pullback in these techs that have been just receiving tons and tons and tons of money. Bitcoin down a little bit today. I'd call that pretty much unchanged on the session, so nothing there. It actually looks like a bullish flag pattern on Bitcoin, which is fine. S&P, all-time intraday high, all-time closing high for the S&P, 49.80. And in today's session, if you notice the dead high of it, 4997.75. We were 2.25 points away from breaking the 5,000 mark today on the S&P. Great. And then let's go down a couple more. Russell 2000 did not join in today's party. It was struggling. It was pretty rough for the Russell, down 0.61%, but also gold down 0.84%, and my silver, oh, come on, just give me a weak rally in silver, and not even a week, but in 7 days of silver rally. Today down 2.17%. Ugh, did not look good today. Yesterday we were up 2%. Well, today we're down 2%. So silver not looking good, continuing that lower high that started back in December of 2023. And finally, crude oil down 2.09%. Look at those 3 days in a row of just ugly push to the downside on crude oil. What to say there? Yeah, technically it still feels like you're in a shorter term uptrend, but boy, it looks like that could be erased here and potentially making some new lows here in the next week or so. All right. What else did I want to discuss with you guys today? I had that. I had the dollar index. I think I got pretty much everything I needed to get covered. What else do I see here? Just called all the levels and supply and demand. Talk about Elliott. Well, perfect. Yeah, no problem. I can do that. Yep. What I'll do is I'll just pull aside and I'll just say, this is the level. This is the level I'm going to buy at, and just go over chart after chart and just click on each level and say, yeah, I would have bought here and sold here, and then I'll go back and say what a great trader I am afterwards. Andreas, what's your take about Chevron and Exxon's earnings? Didn't really look at it too much. I don't really follow oil companies like that. Typically, when I'm looking at earnings, it's about tech. You've got your ExxonMobil today. They beat to 12.5%, and Chevron. So both of these guys beat on their earnings today. I did not listen to their press conference or anything like that. But all in all, it's good to see them post better than expected earnings. But I'm a technical trader. So if I look at XOM, you look at this chart, I'm still not convinced that ExxonMobil has turned the corner. Even though you've had this huge surge up off a beautiful hammer formation on January 24th, great rally up, but I just don't see it. At this point, I'm not that convinced, even though it had a nice rally. It'd have to break above these highs we established. Really, 106 is kind of the area where, okay, we have officially broken this downtrend, even though we tiptoed across it January just a couple days ago. So, all in all, I'm not that excited about that. And how about CVX? Same picture, but it looks actually a little bit worse. And the reason I say it looks worse is you've got this longer-term downtrend of lower highs and lower lows. That still feels intact here. Remember, if we see crude oil prices continue to slide, that ultimately is going to impact Chevron and ExxonMobil's bottom line. So I would argue that there's bearishness on both of these going forward. I should, except for the commercial break, I've already seen like 7 or 8 ads. Did you crank up the ad? Say, no, it's a standard thing. I think I get like a penny an ad or something like that. I don't know. I just said allow ads. So if I start charging or getting sponsors for this show, then I'll remove the ads. But, a couple dollars a month helps offset my hosting costs for the podcast and website and stuff like that. So sorry, Ben. It's one of those things you're going to have to deal with. I do this show 5 days a week for an hour a day, 5 hours a week for free. So the ads are going to be a necessary evil, even though it only brings in like $100 a month for me, but that's what it is. All right, that's going to do it. I got to wrap up. So I already gave you the earnings calendar for next week. Let's look at the economic calendar and look at what's coming out for next week. As far as Monday goes, there's really not much happening other than a rate statement, but that's going to be late at night. That's going to be at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Australia's coming out with their rate statement. Right now, expectations are that we are going to see 4.35%. Right now, the world is in a holding pattern. Now, if you are trading the Aussie dollar, let's go to the old AUD USD, you've seen some pretty sharp declines. We were up over 0.685, and now you're encroaching on 0.65. That's a lot of pips. That's a pretty big decline there for the Aussie dollar, basically just echoing that US dollar strength. Now, the question is, will there be any issue with their rate announcement at 4.35? Do they change anything? What's their statement policy? You do have some demand zones that are significantly lower, right around 0.636, which may end up being that next target. Gavin paid me today. Oh, man, I wonder if I could it'd be great if I could say, I don't want political ads on the show. Either side. I don't care. I don't want political ads on the show, but nothing I can really do about that. And they just put on whoever they want. It would be great if I could say, oh, you ran for this ad? I'm charging more to run that on my feed. Thank you, Big Ev. I know you appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys that make it an effort to watch this show every day. It's got to be grueling, but you've made it part of your routine. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me. I mentioned, actually, let's go to I didn't show you the U.S. stuff on this one. There really isn't much. right? You only have ISM manufacturing services numbers coming out on Monday, and that's pretty much it. You don't see too many red factories here other than the Australia stuff. So there you go. Okay, that's going to do it for me. Again, thanks to Joe Nicholas for the Distillarium Rye. Delicious stuff, by the way. I hope you all have a fun weekend. Do something exciting. Raise a glass of whatever it is that you're drinking to Carl Weathers. Just rest in peace, my friend. I hope it's a better place for you. I hope all of you have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday's session. Take care, everybody. If you have anything you want me to discuss, email me, TraderMerlin@gmail.com, or put it down below YouTube. Take care.